sports leader. Okay, so Kevin Durant got traded ahead of Game 7 of the NBA Finals yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Houston, very clearly a contender in the West, at least for me, going into next year.
Yep.
Phoenix now has Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, and Grayson Allen. Did they not all roughly... I know they don't do the same stuff.
Grayson Allen can play the 3.
Get a little, and Dylan Brooks typically is a forward.
Yeah. Well, that, and on top of that, I think they're probably going to try to use Booker at the 1, which I don't think is a great idea. But it's something that they've done in the past. Also, I think they try to use Bradley Beal as a 1 in some situations. They have a glut of players. So unless they're going to do like a 3-guard set the entire game, but they don't have the big man to do that.
Right.
Then I don't...
They get him with the number 10 pick.
Yeah, they'll draft Jalen Smith again. They're yeah, sorry.
Dragan Bender, anyway?
Dragan Bender. Their roster makeup right now is very, very, very suspect, and it feels like a team that did a move and that will do another move or two down the road.
I agree.
Yeah.
The problem is I was trying to figure out, okay, could the Kings get involved with this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, would you? And I asked, would you tack a couple of picks to Zach LaVine and swap him for Jalen Green? And then you said Green with Grayson Allen works.
Yeah, well, I think it does. Same thing with Dylan Brooks, and that might actually save them some money.
Right. Which would be the goal, right? At least you would assume, because their salary cap situation's a mess.
Yeah.
And their roster's a mess.
Yeah.
So could you potentially get maybe a younger version of Zach LaVine and Jalen Green, who maybe his ceiling's a little higher at this point? You tack on a couple of picks to do it. Maybe you get Dylan Brooks. I don't personally want to have to watch the guy, but it is what it is. You know, he's going to play defense, and he's going to do so in a way that I'm sure Doug Christie and Scott Perry would be big fans of. Is that something you'd even be remotely interested in, or is Jalen Green just kind of too redundant?
Okay, so I like Jalen Green as a player. I look at Jalen Green realistically as a young Zach LaVine.
Right.
Yeah. And if you look at Zach LaVine's first season, he shot 42.2% from the field and 34.1% from 3. Again, you look at Jalen Green's first season, he shot 42.6 from the field and 34.3% from 3. Year 4 looks very similar between these two players. But there was a light bulb that went on with Zach LaVine where he realized that he could become a more efficient player, and Jalen Green isn't there yet.
Mm-mm.
And part of the reason why Jalen Green isn't there, in my opinion, is because, again, when you have an entire roster filled with young top-tier picks, whether it's Asur Thompson or it's Jabari Smith Jr.
Ahmed Thompson.
Ahmed. Yeah. Or, Cam Whitmore, or, again, you got Jalen Green there, you got Shepard there.
You said Jabari Smith?
Yeah, Jabari Smith, Alperen Şengün. You just, add all of these players.
Crazy.
It's super, super difficult to bring each of them along. You can bring them along as a group, but sometimes when you're bringing a group along, the finer nuances of the game are lost on specific players.
Sure.
And I think that Jalen Green has the potential to be an outstanding, outstanding player.
You've seen the flashes.
Yeah, and even the flashes, think back to the flashes of Jalen Green pulling up from 28 feet and hitting 1 3 after another against the Kings. And then look at Zach LaVine and how many times he did that late in games. It's the same exact thing. There's a talent level, a skill set level that is just off the charts there, but you're kind of lost in the shuffle. Even I'd say Jabari Smith Jr. has totally been lost in the shuffle there. He has not been able to take the logical steps that he should have been able to take. And it's because they have too much youth. And that's so difficult to do. A guy like Cam Whitmore just get left out in the cold. Tari Eason, another guy who's in the first 3 or 4 years of his career. So I think he's a player that I would gamble on, but it's got to be the right situation. And you've got to be taking a lateral step. And again, if the Kings could do something like Zach LaVine straight across for him and Dylan Brooks, or him and Grayson Allen, I'm in, because you're getting a player who's 7 years younger, and then you're getting an additional player that is a rotational player
Right.
that helps your team right now.
Mhm.
And again, the Kings need shooting. Grayson Allen is a great shooter, outstanding shooter. They need toughness. Again, Dylan Brooks is outstanding toughness dude. Now, does he get annoying? Sure. Do you want him on your team taking bad mid-range jump shots? No, you don't.
Sure.
But that's okay. You need more talent on this team.
Mhm.
And if you could break up one player into two, and that one of those players that you're bringing in is 23 years old with an unlimited ceiling still, that's something that I would consider if I were the Kings.
Yeah. I think again, this is not something that's been reported as even on the table, but when you see a trade like that, and then you see what you observed with the Suns roster, where we always talk about the Kings roster just needs to make more sense. The Suns roster super doesn't make sense, and their cap situation sucks, and they're trying to figure it out. I don't know if Devin Booker doesn't sound like he's going to ask out. Okay, so you have prime Devin Booker right now.
Yeah,
you got to build around him. But are they looking to save money, which is what that deal would do? Plus, if you're also attaching a pick or two, I think that's still worth it for the Kings, because you have a good war chest of picks to deal with now.
Yeah.
And two, for Phoenix, they have no assets. Accumulating assets has to be one of their top priorities this offseason if you're Phoenix. And man, I know that Zach LaVine doesn't necessarily quote unquote fit in that way, but if you're saving money and getting some picks back, you got to at least think about it if you're Phoenix.
Yeah, no, I think that's possible. There are rumors right now too that Bradley Beal will either be traded or bought out, and the buyout on Bradley Beal is wild.
What is
wild? So he's owed 53.7 and then 57.1 on a player option.
So 110.
So 110 million. So because it's a 2-year deal, you get to double the years and then add one. So they could break it out over 5 years. Would you take a $21 million a year tax hit? Cap hit on him for 5 years? 20. That's what it would be. Like if you stretch provision him, we $21 million for 5 consecutive seasons.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah, actually, it's closer to
because
it's 110. So it's
22.
It's $22 million.
Yeah, because from everything I understand, is Brad Beal is not a culture guy.
No.
and I think Phoenix just has to start over as best they can. And if you can get rid of that Bradley Beal albatross, however you can do it, even it's going to cost $22 million a year for the next 5, and we're going to basically have money tied up, that much money tied up in a guy who's not playing for our team. I don't care.
Well, I'd
way rather that than he's starting, he's not starting, he's available, he's not available. Oh, he doesn't want to be here, but he's going to stay here out of spite. Peace.
Well, but in year one, you save $31 million off the cap.
Yeah.
And that $31 million would drop them from a second apron team all the way below like even the luxury tax. And so that would save them $100 million by like spreading his salary out over 5 years. I'd consider it. And I'd also go to Bradley Beal and say, hey, look, this is what we want to do. Will you take 80 cents on the dollar? Can we get you to take a 20% cut off of that? So then that way the 5 years, we're looking more like 17 million or 16 million. Will you take some money off of that? And then you can go sign somewhere else and go have a good life and just not here. I could see them trying to pull that off.
What a disaster.
Yeah.
What a freaking disaster. Plus, if you stretch provision, geez, easy for me to say. If you stretch provision Bradley Beal, it opens a roster spot for Zach LaVine.
There it is.
There you go.
Plus, the other, so people understand this, the stretch provision, you can't trade it. You can't do any. Once you use the stretch provision, it's straight up $22 million would come off your books for 5 straight years, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yep. You're basically working with a $22 million cap hold for somebody who's not on the team.
Yeah, the NBA used to allow an amnesty, a one-time amnesty when they did their
it was
new
right
CBAs.
After the lockout, right?
Yeah, anytime they do CBA, a new CBA, they would allow you to buy out one contract. and they stopped doing that. They did not have that in the last one, but I remember Michael Finley got bought out. Like, I think they owed him $59 million, and
Yeah.
they just like wrote him a check and said, "All right, see ya." And it wasn't because he was a bad player; it's just he wasn't.
Yeah, he's
player.
expensive.
He was expensive, and
Yeah.
he wasn't living up to that contract.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Okay, we can bail on that contract."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the 49ers did this entire offseason.
Yeah, just
like, you're
bailed
not
on everybody.
bad, we are just not living up to the contract.
Yeah.
So goodbye. Obviously not on an amnesty. They got to pay against the cap and whatnot. But here's the other aspect of the KD thing now that he's been traded to Houston unofficially. You said on this program that the Miami Heat would look into DeMar DeRozan as a possible option if they miss out on the KD sweepstakes. They have missed out on the KD sweepstakes. So we're
going to have to wait and see.
When does DeMar DeRozan get traded to Miami?
Yeah, we're going to have to wait and see if they figure out a deal with the Heat at this point. Everything I heard like a week and a half ago, there were tons of murmurs, tons of like sources saying, "Hey, like watch DeMar to Miami." And, the framework of a deal that could possibly come to fruition. There's been a little kickback on that over the last couple of days, but at the same time, let's wait and see what happens. Let's wait and see what happens because what I was hearing sounded pretty logical. And we're going to have to wait and see if they actually do finish a deal. And like, look, I don't expect it's possible DeMar DeRozan's on this roster next season, but I don't think anyone truly expects that.
Is there, have you heard, I don't even want to say, have you heard anything? Are there rumblings? Do we know? Has this come out? It would be logical to me if DeMar DeRozan very quietly, because he's a pro and Sacramento didn't do anything wrong to him. If he just very quietly met with Scott Perry and said, "Hey, can we? I got a couple of years left.
Yeah, I don't know.
I want to go somewhere else."
I don't know if that happened, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if he didn't make his wishes known during exit interviews. It's not even like exit interviews; it's exit interviews and then like entrance interviews.
Yeah.
It's
right.
like
well, he said on was it Lou Williams podcast?
Maybe
last year when the De'Aaron Fox drama was going down, he basically said if Fox gets traded, I got to kind of rethink what I'm doing here in Sacramento.
Well, yeah, of course. And, again, players don't actually get to just decide what they're going to do.
No doubt.
Unless, again, he wants to go and take a whole lot less money to opt out. But he's not going to because of his age and because of where he's at in his career. He's not going to give the Kings a discount if they're just to buy him out. And, like, look, Houston, when they signed Jalen Green to that contract, it literally was a $30 million placeholder so they could trade a young, athletic guy that they weren't enamored with as part of their long-term future, but you need these types of $30 million contracts. It's the same reason why the Kings signed Harrison Barnes, that 3-year deal was like 17, 18, 19 million. It's so they had one season, a $17 million player, and then the next an $18 million player that they could package for a trade.
Sure.
So I would not be surprised if, again, that's what the Kings are using as their leverage to go on the market. And, the DeMar DeRozan $24.5 million contract that drops to $10 million the next year.
If in capital letters, DeMar DeRozan did say to Scott Perry, Doug Christie, whoever he interviewed with, and said, "Hey, I don't want to be here anymore. I would like to play somewhere where I have a chance to really compete for a championship over the next couple of years, and I don't think it's here."
Yeah.
You have to do that. I know he doesn't get to decide and get to dictate that, but if you're Scott Perry and you're Doug Christie and you're trying to establish a culture and you're trying to head down a new path, get this team going the right direction, I think having a disgruntled DeMar DeRozan on your roster for an entire season or half of a season is antithetical to that.
Well,
that is moving you the wrong way.
And as harsh as this sounds, like, he didn't fit anyways.
Right.
Like, you should be looking to move him anyways, not because, he's a bad player, but because of exactly what you said. He goes out there and he does what he does. he doesn't care if no one wants him to do what he does. He's going to do what he does.
Made a Hall of Fame career out of doing it.
He has. And so you're kind of stuck with a player that is a square peg in a round hole.
Mhm.
But then, as every minute he's on the court, he's about, getting 22 points a game.
If Scott Perry and Doug Christie in their intro presser, or I guess it was technically, is it Doug's intro presser? It was him with Scott Perry? Yes, that was when Doug officially got hired. That's right. So if they had sat down and said, yeah, the type of team we want, we're going to play all isolation ball. We're going to load up on one-on-one scores and we're going to be awesome at that. Then yeah, sure. DeMar DeRozan stays.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a type. He plays the type of game that Doug Christie and Scott Perry are going to want to play.
I would agree.
So to me, it's just logical. It'd be logical for him to want out. It'd be logical for the Kings to want to move him. But nothing on that front just yet, it sounds like. All right. ESPN posted a bunch of stuff